Hello everybody and welcome back to the F2 show. I'm your host Fraser Ford, and joining me yet again to look ahead to this weekend we have Inside F2 writers Aaron Harper, Jenny Craig and Lawrence Griffin. Coming up on the show then, we look ahead to one of the most eagerly anticipated weekends of the year as Formula 2 heads to Monza. Will the championship be wrapped up this weekend? We get our panel's verdict. And we discuss some potential Formula 2 newbies. Okay, Monza then this weekend, one of the highlights of the motorsport calendar really, Aaron, isn't it? A great place and a unique circuit that always, produces great racing, doesn't it?
I love Monza. It's just, when you are growing up as a young motorsport fan, it's just one of those things that's there. It's like bread. It's just always there. You need it in your motorsport calendar, and if it's missing, then you can't have nice things like sandwiches, to continue the bread analogy. It's made by the Tifosi. There's everything to love about Monza. It's fast. It's got chicanes. There's the potential for random things to happen. It's just brilliant. And also on a slightly unrelated note, it's the first track I learnt to play on a racing game because it's mostly straights and I couldn't be bothered to turn corners.
Love it. Yeah, it's certainly an iconic track, isn't it? And Monza is like bread. There you go. It's poetic, that is.
Should have that carved into the asphalt around Monza. It's like bread. Aaron Harper, 2022.
There you go. Love it. I'm sure Alex Jakes and Alex Brundle will be repeating those words in commentary this weekend. It's produced some iconic Formula 2 moments, isn't it, Jenny? I mean, George Russell, Lando Norris at Curva Grande back in 2018. Surely we're in for an exciting weekend, no?
I can't wait. It's like Aaron said, it's just the most perfect track. It's got everything, and we know for a fact that going into it, F2 is chaos anyways. We know that it's just going to be such a good weekend for racing.
Yeah, really excited to see the action this weekend. And Lawrence, penultimate, get your words out, Fraser, penultimate round of the Formula 2 season. The weather looks good. The atmosphere is always good. It's, the perfect weekend for Felipe Drugovich to seal a title, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's certainly looking like it's heading that way. And what an atmosphere that you always get Monza for him to seal the title there. I think it'll be really special for him. I think only seeing the title in Brazil if we were racing there, or at Zandvoort, the home nation of his team, of course. I think only those could come close. But the passion of the fans, we saw it in Zandvoort, and we'll see it again in Monza. That means an awful lot to the drivers. So I think it's going to be a really wonderful weekend for Felipe Drugovich if all goes to plan, which who knows, it might not do. We'll have to wait and see.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but let's take a look at the championship standings going into this weekend. As we've just said, Felipe Drugovich takes a massive lead into this weekend, 69 points as we go into the penultimate round of the season. Teo Pourchaire knows he needs the near-perfect weekend to prevent the Brazilian from taking the title this weekend. The battle continues for the highest placed rookie, Logan Sargent and Jack Doohan. They sit third and fourth. Red Bull pair Liam Lawson and Ayumu Iwasa round out the top six. And the team standings? MP Motorsport retook the lead of the team standings after a brilliant weekend in Zandvoort. It's incredibly close though, as we've said, between the top three teams. ART, Carlin, both 20 points behind the Dutch team. High-Tech and Prema, they'll be hoping for good weekends. They sit fourth and fifth. And Dams round out the top six. And as always, the full standings are available on our website, www.insidef2.com. Okay, as we've just said then, Felipe Drugovich, 69 points clear. And Aaron, do you want to give us a little breakdown of how we can win the title this weekend? It's, fairly simple, isn't it? How many points does he need?
So he needs to leave Monza with a 40-point lead, because if he fails to finish all the remaining races and Teo Pourchaire wins them all, he'll overtake him. And he could, if they match on points, there's potential for Pourchaire to beat him on countback by winning more races. So he only needs 10 points on a weekend where there's 39 available. So, in theory, you could qualify 10th and then win the sprint race. Easy peasy, eh?
Easy peasy. There you go. It's definitely looking favourable for Felipe Drugovich. I think that's fair to say. I suppose my question to you, Lawrence, then is: will he wrap it up on Saturday or Sunday?
I think probably on Sunday. I'd be inclined to say. I think I fancy him to put it on pole again, and therefore he might not be able to get the points that he needs on the Saturday. It definitely will be wrapped up by Sunday, and I quite prefer it to be wrapped up on Sunday. Let's try to sustain what little sort of tension there is for a little bit longer. But as Aaron says, there's a chance that he could end up winning the sprint race. It'll be wonderful for him to calculate a 10th placed qualifying and get on pole and make sure he wraps it up on the Saturday. If he manages to do that, then he should be handed the title just for being that skillful in the first place. But yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, that's for sure. Jenny, if he when he does win the title, shall we say, because it's not if he does, really, is it? He'd obviously have wrapped up the title around earlier than Oscar Piastri did last season. Where do you think that he ranked in terms of Formula 2 champion since Formula 2, reformed in 2017? Where does he rank in terms of the other champions in the past?
I think one thing about this season is the grid has been really, really strong, and we've had a lot of returning drivers, as in there's been Liam Lawson, and obviously his main competitor has been Théo Pourchaire, who is an incredible driver, and he's in his second year as well. Felipe's in his third. He does have that edge, but at the same time, I think he showed in his first season anyways that he is a very, very good driver. I think in his second year, it didn't quite click with UNI for whatever reason, but I think this season he hasn't quite had a Piastri season or a Leclerc season, but I think he has done really well with who he's been against, and he has been very consistent, and he's put in performances like Barcelona, which are very, very impressive. So.
Yeah, first double winner in the category for a long time. Aaron, it's I know it's not a first season win like we've seen in the past from Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, but I mean it's a very credible championship when he does win it, doesn't it? And the fact that he's wrapping it up with it could be 3 races to go, it could be 2 races to go. Is I mean that shows how credible it is, right?
Yeah, he's absolutely done a brilliant job, and there should be no knocking the standard of this championship because it's always a competitive grid, and in some respect you can only play what's in front of you. So if you haven't got what's considered the strongest grid against you, you've still got to go out and beat it. That's your competition. You've got to go out there, deliver, and in some ways if it's considered easier, then the expectation that you do win it is higher. So you've got to then raise your game to meet that level. Felipe's had not a difficult season because he's performed really well and he's delivered all the right results. His consistency is what has set him apart from everybody else. When he hasn't qualified on pole, he's qualified 5th or 6th or 7th, and then started at the front for a sprint race and got a nice tidy sum of points there, and then he's made a couple of places up in the feature and just sort of put both races together to make one big lump sum that he takes forward into the next weekend, which is exactly how to do it. I think I heard way back one of the commentators say that when they changed the point system and the engineers were saying, oh, you just have to finish 6th in every race and you'll be champion. But it's not quite that easy, is it? But Felipe has shown that if you have that level of consistency, you will go a long way. And at some point, if you can keep that consistency, as we saw last weekend in Zandvoort, your rivals will trip up. And that's exactly what happened to Théo Pourchaire.
Yeah, exactly that. And yeah. When he does wrap it up, we know how patriotic the Brazilian fans are, and how much they will be absolutely loving it on social media. And you know what? If you're a Felipe Drugovich fan, let us know on social media how excited you are, and whether or not you think he should be in Formula One next season, because I think that is something that a lot of people think. And obviously, Alex Jakes said in commentary this weekend, he said, Formula One, sign him up. And it's the second time in a row, the second year in a row, that Alex Jakes has had to say that. What state do you think that Formula 2 is in, Lawrence, as the sole feeder series to Formula 1, given that we could see the second Formula 2 champion in as many years not getting a seat on the Formula 1 grid?
Well, I think if this continues, it won't be the sole feeder series for F1 for very long. Christian Horner has said this week that Colton Herta is the only choice to replace Pierre Gasly, who looks like he could be going to Alpine, and Horner's just waiting for Herta to get that super license. It doesn't look like he's going to have enough points at the moment. But if the pressure builds from team bosses, if they're looking elsewhere, then the super license points system will be adjusted to be a bit fairer to other series like IndyCar, and F1 will continually look elsewhere for its talent. Piastri, who is an exceptional talent, won Formula Renault, Formula 3, Formula 2, and even he had to spend the year on the sidelines. Now, you can't really do any better than that. So how on earth do you make that direct step up now if it wasn't good enough for Piastri? Felipe Drugovich has talked at Spa about looking for a reserve seat. So perhaps it's just the case that the way in which people are being promoted to F1 is changing. They're going to be hanging around for a year, potentially in a reserve driver, test driver role before they get that full-time drive. They just to make that sort of connection with the team, especially for Felipe, who's not part of a junior driver program. He needs to get into that organization, give the teams the data they need to have a bit more confidence in him. But I think it's easy to despair the way that it's gone with Piastri and now Drugovich, looking like we're going to have two champions that don't make it to Formula One in the next year. But it's so hard to predict the driver market. We've got to remember it's not too far back that we saw Albon, Russell, Norris all making the step up to Formula One. And as we've seen this season, retirements can set the whole driver market off and give opportunities to all kinds of drivers. So who knows where we'll be in a year's time if you have, say, Hamilton retiring, if Perez retires, if Alonso finally retires. That'll probably be in about 10 years time, the way it's going. Drugovich might yet make it to F1, and we could have another season where several drivers make that step up. So it's very hard to predict the future, but at the moment it is looking a little bit bleak in terms of the talent that is coming through Formula 2, but not yet managing to make it to Formula 1.
We're all sat here, Aaron, because we love Formula 2. We've been talking about Formula 2 all season long. How do we fix this? Or is there an issue to fix? And if there is an issue to fix, how do we fix this? Because it just seems a little bit difficult that the feeder series of Formula 1 is not the champion of the feeder series into Formula 1 isn't getting a seat.
It's tricky to find a solution because we've had the Andretti situation in terms of they wanted to join, but FIA was saying that there's no applications open, and then you've got Colton Herta sort of coming in through the side door at AlphaTauri when the F1 and the FIA want drivers to come up through the ladder, F3, F2, F1, but there's no seats available. So why are they turning away teams? Everything they do seems to contradict each other. Taking the IndyCar point from Lawrence, I think when a driver wins Indy Lights, they get given, I think it's like $1 million or something. I don't quote me on that. They get given some budget to go and find a seat for the following season, whether that's a full-time driver or they just do sort of a part-time gig, because drivers dip in and out in the IndyCar series. Some of them do the ovals and some of them skip those. So maybe there's a thing that Formula 2 can have given to the winning driver of the series to try and give them that leg up, Sometimes it can come down to budget. It might do with Felipe because he's not associated with a junior driver academy, so he might need that extra budget. And budget isn't particularly forthcoming at the moment from Brazil. But having a Brazilian driver back on the grid would be fantastic for Formula One. And, Felipe is brilliant. He's done everything he could possibly do. He's going to have the points for the super license in the way that the system wants at the moment. And yet, he still might miss out to someone who doesn't. So there's clearly a disconnect in the way the ladder and the supply of drivers to Formula One is being attained. So you need more available seats. You need better funding for drivers and therefore the teams. And you need to change the super license point system so that these high quality drivers don't miss out. I actually recorded my own podcast today and I spoke about this, and you need to maybe adjust the way that the super license system is handing out points. So at the moment, it hands out points solely on championship positions over the period of last 3 years. And Drugovich will get 40 points, which you need for a super license, just for winning Formula 2 this season. But if you, let's say, used super license points on championship position and for winning races within a series, which based on the category are then worth a certain amount of points, drivers like Colton Herta won't need exemption because they'll have already shown, yes, I've got race wins and I've finished X position over the last 3 years. I've got the points. There'd be no, it would just be teams taking their choice, and that's fair enough. But at the moment, Drugovich has the super license points but can't get a seat. But Colton Herta doesn't have the super license points, but will just be given an open door, it seems, to come in and join AlphaTauri. So what does that tell Formula 2 and its drivers? We've seen Eilert and Lundgaard go over to IndyCar. We've seen other drivers go to Formula E. And these are drivers that Formula 1 want coming into F1. That's the next generation. And yet they're just moving on elsewhere.
So it's a really interesting point you make about the budget and having a potential, a bonus, a bit of money if someone wins the Formula 2 championship. And obviously that would have stopped, would have meant that Oscar Piastri maybe had a little bit more budget to go into Formula 1 last year. And obviously the reason Zhou Guanyu went to Alfa Romeo Sauber is because of the money that of course he's a brilliant driver and he's proven that this season, but in addition to that, it was the money that he was bringing as well. Do you think that had that happened this season, that been in place, Jenny, that Felipe Drugovich would be looking at a Formula 1 seat? And I suppose purely on that kind of thought as well, if it's, this is again not discrediting Colton Herta, but who would you rather have in the AlphaTauri seat next year? If you were France Tost or Helmut Marko, would you be going for Felipe Drugovich or would you be going for Colton Herta?
I think it's definitely difficult with Drugovich's situation in particular. He's not part of an academy, which I think has potentially held him back, because I think if he was a Red Bull junior, I do think he would have been looked at. If Massa had had Drugovich's season, it's hard to believe that they wouldn't have taken him. So I just think it's a very weird situation. But if, as an F2 fan, if I was Franz Tost, I would personally want Drugovich in the seat instead of Colton Herta. But I am a little bit biased. So, but I do think if he had the Red Bull backing initially, I don't think it would have been a question with the season that he's had.
Yeah, really interesting, and it's a conversation I'm sure we could have for hours. Maybe we'll record a separate podcast on that whole situation. Maybe that's one for the little break between Monza and Abu Dhabi. Someone I want to speak about, and speaking of budget and a lack of budget, is Richard Verschoor. Been absolutely great form since the summer break. He's actually the second highest scoring driver after the summer break. Only our championship leader has scored more points than him in the last 2 weekends. Lawrence, this Trident's home race this weekend as well. It could be a really good weekend for him if he continues his form, no?
Yeah, it could be another great chapter in the story of Richard Verschoor, and we've seen a few brilliant chapters already this season, being the last driver confirmed on the grid this year, and then the first driver to win in the very first sprint race back in Bahrain. What a story it's been for Richard Verschoor this season. But it hasn't always gone to plan. He had failed to score points for a space of 4 races, sort of going into the summer break. But then from the Hungarian feature race to the Zandvoort feature race, there were 5 races in which he scored points on each occasion. And like you say, only the championship leaders scoring better than him. So what a great performance from him in Zandvoort as well. He executed the strategy really well. He got that podium, which he really deserved. And it's really nice to see that upturn in form for him. And yeah, could we see a home victory for Trident again this weekend? We can have mixed up grids in Monza with the effect that the slipstream has on qualifying. So there's always potential for him to get up there. And as he's shown so many times, he has that quality. And when he gets into a race-winning position, he can do it.
Yeah, the slipstream is going to be incredibly important all weekend long, isn't it? So, qualifying will definitely be one to tune into. You've just mentioned about Trident and it being their home race this weekend. Also, Prema's home race this weekend. The Italian outfit probably hoping for a better weekend than they've had over the last few weekends. Obviously, Dennis Hauger on the podium last time out in Zandvoort, but Jehan Drugovich, he's only scored 1 point in the last 3 rounds, Jenny. It hasn't been the easiest of times for Prema, has it?
No, and it's very confusing. I think Hauger's done a great job this weekend, which is something that we've all wanted to see from how he was in F3. But with Drugovich, it's confusing because I think he had a good start of the season. He was consistent, but it didn't go very far into the season. It's just been, he'll start fairly high up in the sprint races and then drop back, and it seems to be tyres or whatever it is, it's just not clicking with Prema in the way that I thought it would. I thought at the start of the season maybe him and Prema I thought would have been a great combination, and I thought they could have been the ones to challenge for a championship. He's in his 3rd year and he is an incredible driver. It just, something hasn't clicked in F2, and especially not this year. It's been disappointing, and I thought, I don't know, I really did expect more from him this season.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because he might have been looking at that AlphaTauri seat moving into next year instead of Colton Herta or Felipe Drugovich maybe. But shame for him. Okay, as we said on the Zandvoort review, go and check that out if you haven't done already. Roy Nissany will be missing the Monza weekend after accumulating too many penalty points throughout the course of this season. I think one thing's for sure, and that's not going to be a Formula 3 driver. Obviously, the Formula 3 season coming to a close this weekend, and we don't often talk about Formula 3 on the show, but I did want to talk about it. Obviously, it's the championship decider this weekend, Jenny. It's been a great season. Who's impressed you the most, and which of those drivers do you think we could expect to see in Formula 2 next season?
So many of that grid are extremely talented, and I cannot wait for F2 next year. I think if we get what F3 has had this year, if you haven't watched F3 this year, I'm sorry, because it has been incredible. The championship is so tight, and I think the way that Isaac Hadjar's done that season has been very impressive, because he's gone against a lot of quick drivers, but he's gone against Victor Martin and Arthur Leclerc. They were incredible last season as well, but even better this season. And I think if we get so many of them drivers going into F2 next year, we're in for a treat. Caio Collet as well is another one that's been really, really great in the last few rounds, it's going to be a great year next year. I'm very, very, very excited for that one.
Yeah, obviously Isaac Hadjar links with the Red Bull team. He may well be in line for a Red Bull seat moving into the future if he can emulate his form in Formula 2. Obviously, you've just mentioned there Victor Martins, Isaac Hadjar, we've just been speaking about, Ollie Behrman, Arthur Leclerc, Roman Stanek. So many names, aren't there? I mean, Zane Maloney's had some brilliant, won the last 2 feature races in a row. So many names there. Aaron, is there one that stands out for you? And if I had to get you to make a decision, who do you think will win the Formula 3 Championship this weekend?
It's very difficult to put my hat on one name for the championship. Obviously, Victor Martins and Isaac Hadjar have something of an advantage in the points. Hadjar has got 12 points back to Stanek in third, and Martins leads by 5. I mean, this is Monza. Anything could happen. It just takes one virtual safety car at the wrong moment, or an accident, one missed braking zone, and that's it. I mean, strap yourselves in. Here comes the British bias. I would like to see Oliver Bearman do it, purely because it's a British driver, and I always want the British drivers to do well. Extremely patriotic in that respect. There's so much to play for. It's almost wide open. I think anyone from the top 7 can win it, if my maths is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Crawford needs a magic weekend and everyone else to stay in the hotel to win it, but there's still that opportunity. I mean, there's been you can get a funny bowl of pasta or something, and that's it. A driver's struck out, so it's all to play for. It'd be really interesting. I'd like to see Oliver Bearman do it, as I said, but whoever wins it has done a great job, because it's been supremely competitive, and like Jenny said, it's just been full of high quality racing all the way through, and we've had so many different winners. And Zane Maloney's making a bit of a charge now. He's the man in form. He's won 2 feature races. Who knows?
Really exciting, isn't it? And I tell you what, if you haven't watched Formula 3 before, tune in this weekend, because it is going to be an incredible title battle. Lawrence, looking ahead, looking back, if you like, Logan Sargent, Jack Doohan, they jumped in Formula 2 cars at back end of last season off the back of their Formula 3 campaign. They are the highest placed rookies right now. Does that give it a slight bit of advantage going into the following season when you're in Formula 2 full time? And could we expect to see any of those drivers that we've just mentioned in a Formula 2 car in Abu Dhabi? There's obviously sometimes a little bit of change looking ahead to the future. Do you expect to see any of those drivers in Formula 2?
I think it could make a lot of sense. Like you say, we've seen with drivers in the past, Jack Doohan obviously getting into a Formula 2 car at the back end of last season, and that really did seem to pay off in how well he was able to start the year, taking the very first pole position of the season in Bahrain and really hit the ground running. It gives you that first feel of Formula 2. And I suppose mentally you have the whole winter to then prepare. You're not turning up on the first day and that's your first experience of a Formula 2 car. And I think that probably gives you quite a big psychological advantage. So I think it's certainly something that teams will be looking at doing. Will Red Bull be playing the puppet master? Someone like Isaac Hadjar, as we mentioned, he's turning 18 later this month. He's still very young. Second in the standings going into this weekend. 3 race wins, I should say, this year. He's a really phenomenal talent and one of the hottest properties in the Red Bull Driver Academy at the moment, which is some going. I think if you look at, you've got Dennis Hauger, Liam Lawson, Yuri Vips, who have all, I think it's fair to say, underperformed this season compared to what we expected of them. Yuma Wassa is right up there, and he's impressed, and we'll have to see how he goes in his second season of Formula 2. But someone like Hadjar, who is so young, and as we've mentioned, as Aaron mentioned, there is a danger in the drivers getting promoted too quickly, and it sort of them not quite keeping up with the pace of their own sort of upwards trajectory through motorsport. I think it would be a very shrewd decision to put him in a Formula 2 seat at the end of this year, give him that experience, let him hit the ground running going into next year, because I don't think it'll be many years, if he continues how he's going, before he's in Formula 1.
Absolutely. It's going to be really interesting, and interesting to see as well if they remain with their teams. If Victor Martins steps up in an MP car next season, I'm sure that's not going to be a bad car to be in at all. Same with Isaac Hadjar if he stays with High Tech. Okay, that's all we got time for today. My thanks to Aaron, to Jenny and to Lawrence, as always, for joining me on today's show. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a like, subscribe for more Formula 2 content. We'll have lots coming your way this weekend, including going live on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch, go and check us out straight after both the sprint race and the feature race. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments section below. Check out hashtag the F2 show and get involved in the conversation on social media. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.